Good evening, everyone. Call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to go out of order to move item number 8, presentation of congratulatory certificates for the 2014 Class S State Championship Seymour High School cheerleading team. Have a motion by Karen, second by Anne Marie. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Chair votes aye. Motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda, presentation of congratulatory certificates for 2014 Class S State Championship Seymour High School cheerleading team. First, I'd like to congratulate, on behalf of the entire town, the Board of Selectmen, I'd like to congratulate all the girls for another. This is becoming a bit of a habit, so we have these all set and everything. So what we're going to do is, Al is going to call each girl's name, if you can come up, and I'll present you your certificate, and then at the end what we'll do is everyone, all the girls can gather around with their coaches, we'll take a picture with the board. Okay?
All right. Amanda Estwan.
Congratulations.
Amanda Michaud. Ashley Bercier. Brianna Smith-Keller. Gina Green. Grace Mitchell. Jasmine D. Pietro. Jennifer Forsythe. Jessica Forsythe. Kayla Christensen. Kristen Cavallero. Michaela Scheck. Marissa Merithu. Megan Gale. Nina Poeta. Peyton Bach. Rachel Cinto. Samantha Fenton. Tiffany Hushin.
Okay, you want to constitute with the check marks as well?
Yes. Jessica Bucher and Rayanne Burns.
Okay, so girls, you want to come up and kind of gather around the table, we'll take a giant picture. Get at least one picture of this. This is absolutely going on.
No, I was gonna bend Sorry. Thank you. Can we all group in one area? 1, 2. Everybody smile. 1, 2, 3. They're Gina, yours is upside down. Oh wait, we're all yeah. Hold up your certificate. Yeah, so
Thank you very much. Thanks for that indulgence, everyone. Okay, with that, we'll go back into order with item number 3, public comment. Is there any public comment? For those of you coming forward, please state your name and address for the record, and we ask that you speak into the microphone.
Frank Conroy, 167 Schofield Street. First of all, I think I'm going to give a lesson in history tonight about the different names that we've had. The Board of Selectmen has been excellent naming the different buildings, and Norma Drummer was an excellent town clerk. I'm here really to talk about Paul Pawlak. And Paul, when I was first selectman in 1980, he was one of the selectmen. If I didn't have Paul with me that time, I don't think I would have even succeeded. But the Board of Selectmen was very privileged to have 2 buildings, or 2 sites that were named. And one of them was the Francis Flaherty. He was the first police chief that the town of Seymour ever had. Excellent person, excellent. Unfortunately, he died a terrible death. He had diabetes, both legs were amputated. And I was on the state police at that time. And I was with Flip for the last 2 hours that he lived. And I felt so bad about it because he did so much for the town of Seymour. So when I became first selectman, it was my recommendation that that room down there, which had 3 cells, by the way, and so a lot of people didn't know that. But anyway, it was unanimous. Both Republicans and Democrats were unanimous on it. They couldn't be. Art Davies, Gene Carshall was Republicans, and then the Democrats. The second choice I had was a Catherine Matthews field. Catherine Matthews was the only person that was a living person that we named something after in town of Seymour. I had a very close relationship with Catherine. In January of 1977, we had a home invasion. Terrible. 4 individuals went into the home and they tied her up along with the housekeeper. It could have been a fatal situation. One of the incidents that one of the individuals, he made a couple of threats to her. I was in charge of the investigation. I had 4 state police detectives with me, and in 4 days we solved the crime. The 4 individuals went to jail for 5 years. So I had a very close relationship with Catherine, and when I became first selectman, I recommended that we name the field after her. The field was nothing but a hole in the ground. It was an industrial park. North Haven Construction had a surplus amount of dirt, gravel. They filled it in. So at the night of the executive session and made mention of Catherine's name. And Paul Pawlak said to me, Frank, I think it's a great idea. Great idea. I'm for it 100%. But I know Catherine. I'm a little reluctant because with Catherine, she doesn't ask for anything and she doesn't want anything. She said, what I recommend is that you go tomorrow to see her. And I said, certainly I'll do it. So under Paul's guidance, I went and saw Catherine. And when I mentioned it to Catherine, she says, you don't have to do that, Francis, she called me. And I said, Catherine, it isn't that we don't have to do it, we want to do it. She was very reluctant on it. She just said, well, I have done nothing for the town of Seymour to deserve this. And we all know different. What she did in the background was unbelievable. So tonight I'm here basically Paul Pawlak. What he's done for the town of Seymour, I can't tell you. I have a good memory, but he did so many things. He's given up so many hours. His wife, how many hours that she spent without him, because he was sitting here or was up in Hartford. He was a great guy. Not only that, he's got a great family. So tonight, let's make a decision that we all can be proud of. The Board of Selectmen in the past have made excellent decisions, and I think tonight they'll do the same thing. But Paul, the Clean Water Act that he was very active in, Paul didn't have any enemies. He said all friends, believe it or not, Republicans and Democrats. And one of our first selectmen, Mr. Miles, was very close to Paul. They conversed all the time on different issues, all for the betterment of Seymour. So tonight, I would hope that we can keep our record up as the Board of Selectmen making a wise decision. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment?
Ron Callanan, 2 Washington Avenue, Seymour. I'm here on the sale of Lopresti School, and I guess I'm a little upset over how this has been handled, at least from my opinion. And I'd like to know when was the notification for today's meeting posted? Because to my understanding, it was only posted today on the valleyindependent.org and on Facebook.
I can't answer questions during public comment.
Okay.
But we have all that information readily available.
And I'd also like to know why we didn't use the code red system to notify everybody so that they knew that the school was going up for a vote.
Again, I can't.
Yes, I understand that. I understand that. All right. And in the June 3rd meeting, you stated that the school was posted that it was being sold and everything else at the school. So after the meeting, I went to the school to see that posting. Well, you were correct. The posting is there. It is behind the fence, so you can't read it. So to me, it doesn't make much sense to have put signage up that you can't read. And then the June 3rd meeting, you made no mention of this meeting coming up, and I don't understand why. Because 2 weeks, I would assume that you already knew that this meeting was, but you made no indication that this meeting was going to come to pass.
Well, that's not
that
correct.
quickly.
That's not correct, but continue.
Okay. I understand from a newspaper article that the project will require a zoning change. Why wasn't this mentioned at the last meeting? And what are the proposed changes? I understand that St. Augustine's Church has a parcel of land adjacent to the school. Does the developer plan to purchase this piece of land as well? If not, what's to stop the church from selling its parcel for the same purposes? Meaning more condominiums or apartments. What is the impact on the area, what is going to be the impact on the area water and sewer system? Has a study been performed to answer those questions? As I understand it, there will be 2 additional buildings constructed on the site. How many units will each of these buildings contain? What about the additional resources that will be necessary to support those additional apartment complexes? Additional traffic, additional school children, garbage collection, fire and police. Have these problems been studied and resolved, and at what cost? In conclusion, as I see it, the sale of this property, adding approximately 160 cars to a congested traffic area, adding a burden to the town resources, and lowering the property values of surrounding homes, all this and no appreciable tax revenue due to the tax break for the next 5 years. Instead, we should tear down the old school, make a nice park area for residents without burdening the town resources and increasing the property values. An added bonus in the future may be that if we need another school, we have the property in which to build it on, and we don't have to spend exorbitant amounts of money to buy another piece of land. Don't think of this as a problem, but as an opportunity for the future. It pays to plan ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan. Is there any other public comment? Zero? You keep getting cut off. No, it's okay.
I'm not a Seymour resident. My name is Joe Pawlak. I'm from Watertown, Connecticut. I'm here to represent my family and my mother, speaking specifically to item 10 on the agenda. But before I do that, I'd like to just wander a little bit. It was interesting to see the presentation of the girls' cheerleading championship squad in Seymour. If I may go back a few years, I graduated from Seymour High School in 1961, and back then, way back in the day, we had 3 sports: football, basketball, and baseball, and only boys played. They did have some sort of a pickup girls basketball team, and some of you may remember it was really a strange game because I think there were three girls on offense, 3 girls on defense, and they never crossed half court. 3 girls stayed there and played defense. If they got the rebound, they threw it to the girls on offense. It was just crazy. But anyway, I digress. There were no women's or girls' sports back in those days. And to see this cheerleading squad get their honor and their due is truly remarkable, because when I was in high school, I think, and again, this is a 71-year-old memory working here, I think there were 7 girls on our cheerleading squad. We didn't have a softball squad, and I know the girls just won the state championship again for, I think, the 9th time. And if I remember correctly, I think the first time they won it was under the direction of a classmate. Well, he wasn't a classmate of mine, but a teammate of mine, Vic Chiklinski. And Vic, I see Vic quite frequently. So times passed, and we have some things that have changed much for the better. But to get back to the item 10 on the agenda, the consideration of naming the diversion on the falls in honor of my father. My father grew up in western Pennsylvania, southwestern Pennsylvania, in a little coal mining town called Jacobs Creek, back in the early 20s. I remember him telling me about watching, I think it was Warren Harding's funeral train wind its way through Pennsylvania on its way to Ohio. And I've thought about it. And I don't think anybody would have expected a tow-headed, stubborn little kid like him, who ran around town most of the time when the warm weather months, barefooted, not because he wanted to, but because they had to. They didn't have that much. My grandfather was a coal miner. But anyway, they moved here to Seymour in the valley back in the 20s, and he went through the Seymour school system. And in 1934, he had to take a year off in high school to work up in Naugatuck at the Butterfield Company to augment the family's income during the Depression. There were 7 kids in the family. He went back to high school in 35. He was elected president of his class and graduated in 36. And the rest of what he did is pretty well public knowledge now with respect to his public life and his personal life with my mother and us 4 boys. There were 5, but one of them passed away in 1949. He was 1.5 years old. But I think about Dad's accomplishments. This kid from Pennsylvania with nothing more than a high school education. The things that he did for Seymour, for the Valley, and for the state of Connecticut. I mean, we have him and his committee in the House of Representatives and the State Senate to thank for the clean waters that we enjoy in this state now. I mean, when my dad was thinking of these things, when he was doing these things, he was, I guess you would say, an environmentalist before the word was even in fashion or thought about. To him, it was right. He was a kid who grew up enjoying some of those things, whether it was in Pennsylvania or in Seymour. But he knew when things were right and he acted on them. And the Clean Water Act that he and his committee put in place for the state of Connecticut. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, it was almost a joke to figure out what color the Naugatuck River was going to be on any given day. And I remember many times driving on the upper or lower road, principally the lower road, looking at the black mark, the line on the rocks. When water was down, you could see all the pollution that had discolored the rocks. Today, the Naugatuck River is, I believe it's classified as a Class B river, recreational. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they stock it with salmon. I've seen people kayaking there, canoeing there. When Dad and his people, his committee, passed that legislation back in the 60s, I don't think the Naugatuck River was ever recreationally usable for 100 years, ever since they started building factories up and down the Naugatuck River, starting in Waterbury or perhaps up in Thomas. So now we have a river which is supporting wildlife, waterfowl, fish, recreation. Rivers, streams, lakes, ponds, all as a result of the legislation that he and his fellow committeemen passed for our benefit. Your consideration of naming the bypass, the ladder, fish ladder, in his honor, when I told my brother Skip, my oldest, I got a 73-year-old brother named Skip. I mean, that's funny. But when I told him, Paul Roy sent me an email, he called me up and he was thrilled. We were both thrilled. I can't tell you how much it means to us and how much my father loves us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Averill? I want to see your coffee.
Rosalie Averill, 38 North Benham, Seymour. Unlike the previous speakers, I need footnotes, chip sheets. The outset, let me say that I have known Paul over 40 years, so I'm speaking from my heart. When I was asked by Selectwoman Karen Stanek if I would be willing to address the Board of Selectmen this evening regarding the naming of the fish bypass in honor of the late Paul Pawlak, I was honored yet humbled to be able to talk briefly about a man who has left his mark on the town of Seymour and our community. I won't try to touch upon each and every attribute Paul had and how it affected many of us. My remarks will be limited to his role with our Naugatuck Valley Health District. As a member of the Naugatuck Valley Health District's Board of Directors since 1999, I am, on many occasions, reminded how important a role Mr. Pawlak had in the creation of NVHD. As a fellow director said at one of our recent board meetings after Paul had died, and I quote, "Paul was a pioneer of the Valley and a state representative for many years. He played a critical role in the organization of the Naugatuck Valley Health District. He was a strong advocate for non-MD health directors, influencing the hiring of Susan Addis, who in her career became a state commissioner of public health and a national public health leader. Susan became our district's first director. I took the liberty of contacting Susan regarding naming this fish bypass in honor of Paul. She said she had been following the news articles on this and it would be a fitting tribute. She said Paul exercised extraordinary leadership in bringing a full-time health department into existence in our valley. She noted that in the course of doing this, Paul met with many obstacles, yet he persisted in his determination to get the Valley Health District into being and to advocate a non-MD health director. He was able to speak with the right people and convey the message very convincingly, yet diplomatically. Paul was the first chairman of the Naugatuck Valley Health District Board of Directors back in 1972. To this day, his name still surfaces at periodic meetings of our board. I cannot think of anyone more deserving of this honor and more respected by those who were fortunate to have known him. Naming the fish bypass after the late Paul Pawlak will be a fitting tribute to this man who has given so much of his time to so many causes. And just a footnote, for those of you who personally knew Paul, you know how much he loved to polka. So as a lasting tribute, should you vote to name it in honor of the late Paul Pawlak, the fish will be poking upstream for years to come in his honor.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Good evening, Mr. First Selectman, members of the Board of Selectmen. I too rise this evening to speak in favor of the naming of the Fish Bypass and the Fish Bypass Park in memory and in honor of Paul Pawlak Sr. Paul Pawlak was a giant, an icon, a pathfinder in our community, both at the local level and at the state level. And as was stated by the previous speakers, he accomplished so much for this community and this state. And I'm not going to go through all of those accomplishments or attributes again. But just to add, I had the honor and the privilege to serve with Paul Pawlak on your board, the Board of Selectmen, in the 1980s. And let me tell you, it was an honor and a learning experience. I was a young person just out of school, just entering into the governmental arena, and I learned so much from Paul Pawlak. And I learned how important honesty is, how important it is to be ethical, and how important it is to control oneself, especially in the political and governmental arena. Not to shout, not to scream, but to deliberate and to respect everyone's opinions and to move forward and to accomplish what's good for the community. Those are qualities I learned from Paul Pawlak Sr. Paul never raised his voice. Once in a while you could tell that he was upset with a position or something that someone might say, but he never raised his voice, and he calmly deliberated and made decisions best for the community. Paul accomplished so much, as was previously stated, but as we look to what is being proposed for your consideration this evening, we look at the Naugatuck River, we look at the project that's before you, and as you know, I've done legal work on this project for over a decade for the town of Seymour. And this project, this fish bypass project, is the final link in restoring the Naugatuck River to what it was prior to the Industrial Revolution and the pollution that was described earlier. It's the final link in restoring the river to be a spawning ground for migratory fish from the Long Island Sound to the Thomaston Dam. And many people don't realize there is a fish ladder at the lower dam. All the upper industrial dams north of here to the Thomaston Dam have been removed. This bypass is going to allow fish to spawn from the Long Island Sound north once again. And The restoration of the river in that respect is not only important for fish, but also for other wildlife, especially birds of prey, who will foster and will see other birds come back that have left the river basin because certain fish do not migrate into the river. Pawlak Sr. truly deserves the honor of the fish bypass and the park being named after him. It will be a tribute to him, and a tribute to this community, and a tribute to his family. And I ask you to give serious consideration to the proposal, and hopefully you will vote to name the park and the bypass in his memory and honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Just before we do any public comment, you turn easy up. That's it, as far as it goes. Is there any additional public comment?
My name is Bernice Conowitz, and I live at 61 Pershing Avenue in Seymour. Up until a year ago, I lived on Walnut Street. Both my children went to Maple Street School. I hate to see the school sit there and do absolutely nothing, and the town is paying the oil bill, the electric bill, the maintenance bills, when we can get money for this town and taxes for this town and put up housing. Yes, it's going to be a one-bedroom, two-bedroom condo, apartments from what I understand. Doubt that there'll be children there. Put a park up, we have 6 parks. How many parks does this town have? Go to French Park, you hardly ever see a kid play in there, unless there's an activity going on. We were holding on to the middle school for how many years before the boys clubs and girls clubs went in there. The senior citizens went in there. That was empty for many years, and nothing was ever done about it until recently. Please, vote right, vote for this town, and sell the building, and let's get some money for the town.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Ms. Conroy?
Excuse me, sir. Can you hear me?
Hear you perfect.
All right. Oops. I think we've come full circle. We've all heard how what goes around comes around. Everyone has, in their lifetime, heard that expression, I'm sure. And tonight, when we're talking about the fish dam and clean water that we have today, I know there are a few of you in this room, and some of the parents of the young ladies who left here already this morning remember when they went to high school or middle school on Pine Street, they didn't have to come home or go to the teacher and say, the dog ate my homework. Remember that excuse? All they had to say was, ooh, the wind took my homework out of my hand and it went into the river and it disintegrated. That was the truth, believe me. Because it went down there like this. Naugatuck was bad, but we had it just as bad here. I just think, in my mind, we have reached full circle. This valley, the falls in this valley were the most beautiful spot on the Naugatuck River. Mother Nature gave that to us. She didn't give it to Beacon Falls, she didn't give it to Naugatuck, she didn't give it to Derby or Ansonia, she gave it to us here in Seymour. What we have done recently is wonderful. It is absolutely wonderful. I'm so proud of the way it looks down there. It's progress, it's going on, but it's still honoring what Mother Nature gave us. Even before we white immigrants came to this community in the town of Derby, what we were known as originally, this part of the river and this part of town, back in 1879, this is the way it was described. And I'm a historian, so hopefully I'm teaching you something tonight, and if you already know it, I hope I am just reminding you, all right? The early settlers were too much occupied in the arduous labors required in establishing homes in the wilderness to pay any unnecessary attention to the recording of the transactions and the merest mention here and there with occasional documents which have been handed down afford but scant material for a narrative of their lives, labors, and liberties. This portion of the Naugatuck Valley was first distinguished by the falls as the most remarkable feature of the kind in the length of the river. The long ridge of rock through an opening of which the water rushed, foaming and tossing into the depths below, were well known to the whites as well as the red men at a very early date. The especially fine fishing below the waters, as well as, I'm sorry, I lost my place. The especially fine fishing below the rocks and the abundant game on the forest-clothed hills and in the natural meadows of the vales were grand attractions to the hunter, the trapper, and the fisherman, whether of Aboriginal or Anglo-Saxon blood. Dr. Trumbull, in his History of Connecticut, says that as early as 1633, there was a tribe of Pequot Indians at the falls on the Naugatuck. Now, back in the time of the sesquicentennial, I happened to be on the committee, and this was what we made as a souvenir, and it's the town seal. And what does the town seal show? The waterfalls in downtown Seymour with the Indy in front of it. The sign that's outside this building has the same picture, okay? Before Pawlak got us all involved with this Clean Water Act, nobody even cared about the river. My husband's father worked in the Seymour manufacturing, and it was standard practice when they changed the oil on the machinery, it went out the window into the river. Nobody realized what they were doing. They used to joke, the guys would flip out a cigarette and the river would catch on fire. The river would catch on fire. There was so much oil in the river. Paul got involved with and worked hard to get the Clean Waters Act of Connecticut enacted. And as a result, it is clean today. And fishermen will come back. And young families will come back to watch the fish come out there at the new walkway that they've put over there. The other thing is, I don't know how many people in town of Seymour know that the president of Yale, Timothy Dwight was his name. Two of his sons were very involved in the industry in the town of Seymour. Some of the buildings at Yale University were built with lumber that came from the Stokerad area of Seymour. So like I said, I'm the historian, and I want to share this with you. And President Dwight wrote a book, Dwight's Travels. And in volume 3 of that book, this is what he stated. Starting at the journey of which a very graphic record has come down to us, was made by Timothy Dwight, president of Yale University, in the autumn of 1811. He speaks of our town with enthusiasm. He has an eye for natural beauty, and he found it here. His words are fairly aglow as he writes about the spot which lies a few rods north, saying, quote, "The scenery at this spot is delightfully romantic." How many in the town of Seymour would have said that in the 60s and the 70s, even into the 80s? How many would ever even think of Seymour as being romantic? But now, with the improvements that have been made there, with the clean water that's there, thanks to Paul, how many young brides and grooms will have their pictures taken there? It will become a romantic spot again. Everything goes around and comes around. These are the words of the president of Yale University back in 1811. The scenery at this spot is delightfully romantic. I just quiver when I hear that. I mean, that's incredible. The falls are a fine object. The river, the valley, the bordering hills, the farms and houses, the groves and forests unite for a landscape in a high degree interesting. And I think that's a wonderful tribute to our town. And by the same token, I think it would be a wonderful tribute to our town if we honored Paul, who worked so hard to make the water clean so this could come about. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Allen. Is there any other public comment? On the microphone?
Jennifer Magri, 16 Union Street, Seymour. I was here on the 3rd to speak about the LaPresti project. I'm back here again. I have to say that I am yet again disappointed in the lack of people coming out in the community when there's something this important to be discussed. I do believe that there was not a great understanding that you would need 50 people here to move it to a public vote. I have the same concerns that I had on June 3rd. This is a project going into a neighborhood that is already densely populated. I agree, as a town we need to sell the building. I'm not sure that this is necessarily the right project. I've got still a lot of unanswered questions that I don't think we've gotten any answers to in the last 2 weeks. I'm not sure if you move this forward, if that means that there's no stopping it once you move it forward, or if it just means that it's part of the process. My concern is that, you know, if you look at that geographic area, there are many, many apartment buildings in that surrounding area already. Adding more is just going to add to the traffic. You know, I have infrastructure concerns. I'm not necessarily concerned about it from a school system perspective because I don't think you're going to get families in there. I do still have the open question about what's market rate versus affordable housing, because sometimes those are one and the same, and that brings in a different clientele based upon those numbers. I tried to research that, but was not completely successful, and I don't want to quote any facts unless I know they're facts, but I think we need some answers on that as well. So I really hope if you do move this forward that it doesn't mean that this is a done deal and we have no recourse, because I think we really truly need answers to this, because economically even, you know, a $4 million investment, that's about $80 a square foot for that building. I don't know how he's going to do what he says he's going to do. So I think you need some more answers personally. So I thank you for your consideration, and I'm going to go home now. Thanks.
Is there any other public comment? Is there any other public comment? Is there?
I think you can hear me from here. I wasn't going to speak about the LaPresti school, but I'm sitting here saying, what's the alternative? There is no other alternative, quite frankly. Buildings sitting there, eating away at my tax dollars and your tax dollars. Every time we pay an oil bill, every time, whatever, we're still insuring it. There is no other alternative. And I know that the neighbors don't like the idea of a project, but if you close your eyes and you visualize what used to be done, I went to that school. You have school buses with disgusting fumes, noise, you have kids in and out, up on the hill, the plateau playing, you have parents picking up, dropping you off. So the idea of traffic was there all along for all those years as it was a school. I think we become complacent, we see the building idle. We like the idea that there's no noise, there's no traffic, there's no smell, there's no anything. And that's not another option for this board to consider. That's on the table. That's not an option, guys, and you know that. And I think that if you take a step back and you realize what it's costing just to sit there and say, well, what are our other alternatives? This developer has a track record. Can he make it work? That's his problem, once he buys the building. That's not our problem. Point of the matter is, I want my tax dollars going somewhere else. If you're spending $80,000, $90,000 a year just to keep it empty, I'd rather see you hire 2 teachers. I'd rather see you clean up the parks, do something with that money other than paying for an empty building to sit there. And I know that it's not the nicest decision that you're going to have to make, but leaving it empty is not an option on the table, and it shouldn't be. You have to look at the whole project and say what's best for the town. Do we spend the money for nothing? It was a school, it had traffic, it had noise, it had fumes, it had whatever. It's not going to be any worse, but it can't be what it is now, and I think that's the problem. People think it's going to stay the way it is, and it's not. That's not an option for this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Is there any other public comments? Okay, hearing no other public comment, we'll close public comment. We'll move on to item number 4. Approval of minutes from the June 3rd, 2014 meeting. Can I have a motion to do so? So moved. Motion by Len, second by Anne Marie. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The chair votes aye, motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda, item number 5, approved minutes from the June 3rd, 2014 public hearing. Have a motion to do so?
Second.
Motion by Anne Marie, second by Al. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The chair votes aye, motion passes 6-0. There'll be no first selectmen's report tonight due to the length of the meeting. But the one thing I did want to do, if I could, just a point of personal privilege, I'd just like to take an opportunity to thank Mr. Loda for his years of service in filming these. I believe this is his last Board of Selectmen meeting that he'll be with us. He's moving to Georgia, so on behalf of everybody, I just wanted to say thank you for all that you've done for the town over the last 30 or so years. So,
Thank you.
enjoy your retirement. Okay, item number 7, discussion take possible action regarding the 2014 Winter Wonderland Craft Fair. In your packets, you should have an email to Rory from Lori Tilton. It says, hi Rory, we're going to have the Winter Wonderland Craft Fair again this year. I spoke with Jack Ahern and we agreed on November 1st as the date. Can you please put us on the Board of Selectmen's agenda so that we may ask for their approval? Thank you, Lori Tilton. I believe this is the 3rd year of here.
Lori could not make it tonight, so I'm Danielle Merritt. Yes, it's going to be the 3rd year, and we have even talked to Boys and Girls Club to just have them approve it too, to let them know that we'd be in there. So we're looking just for your approval. They brought in about 400 to 500 people who came to the craft fair last year.
Is this being done in conjunction with the fair that the church does as well to try to maximize?
We're going to try to, I think they've already scheduled theirs. We will let them know, so maybe they can move it. We are going to let them know. But Jack he asked us if we could move it, because we kept on doing it the same weekend. He asked if we could move it up earlier so it doesn't interfere with basketball.
Yes.
And we complied with him and moved it to the beginning of November.
Okay.
But we will talk to the church. We talk to them to let them know.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? No? Okay, if there's no questions, then I'll entertain a motion to allow the Winter Wonderland Craft Fair to be held at the Seymour Community Center on November 1st, 2014, pending all required insurance being met by the Operations Department.
So moved.
Motion by Karen, second by Len. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The chair votes aye, motion passes 6-0. I'd like to make a motion to go out of order to item number 10, discussion take possible action on the naming of the Tingue Dam Bypass Channel and Park.
So moved.
Motion by Len, second by Anne Marie. Is there any discussion? Just under discussion so that way Mrs. Pawlak can go home so she doesn't have to stay all night, because these meetings sometimes go on forever. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The chair votes aye, motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda, discussion take possible action on the naming of the Tingue Dam Bypass Channel and Park.
Mr. First Selectman,
Mrs. Stanek.
I move that we, the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Seymour, name the Fish Bypass Channel and adjoining park after the Honorable Paul Pawlak Sr.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
You know, and if I may, I don't think there's a whole lot that we can add to what these folks all added, other than from my personal experience, the help that Paul gave me as well, and the gentleman that Paul was, that, you know, we all knew him to be. He really was, and, you know, to go to his house and talk to him and get invited in, and, you know, it's just amazing. Even on Halloween, bringing my son by, my son would leave to go hit a bunch of other houses, Paul and I'd still be talking there, but that's the kind of guy he was, and we enjoyed it. So immensely enjoyed Paul Pawlak.
Is certainly a very well-deserving man, to be honored. So if I could just recognize Mrs. Pawlak as well in the crowd, I'm not sure everybody knows her. So she's gracious enough to be with us this evening. The expectation is that we'll have a groundbreaking ribbon cutting in early September. So at that point, we will invite everybody. The whole Pawlak family will be there as well. And we'll have something to, assuming the vote goes yes, we'll have something to honor Paul's memory as well.
And Mr. President, if I may, I have a letter here from Paul Pawlak's grandson from the Special Forces of the United States Army. I would like to pass out.
Absolutely. I'm just going to keep sitting. And we're going to keep on for the actual record. Okay, then, if there's no other questions or comments, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The chair votes aye. Motion passes 6-0. Congratulations. And just on a side note, Karen, thank you for bringing this to our attention and moving this along.
Thanks.
Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 9. Discussion, take possible action on the easement request for Robert Leggio Sr. Mr. Leggio. The floor is yours. Come to the microphone.
Robert Leggio, 84 Colony Road, Seymour, Connecticut. I own a piece of industrial property next to the town. I've been trying to get approval for an easement over the town property on Silver Mine Road, so as I could hook it to the public water system. I wrote a letter to Mr. Miller, which I have a copy of explaining. It's not too long. I'd like to present it to the board members so they know what it's about. After I sent the letter, I had a conversation with Mr. Miller. And he said I would have to meet with the Planning and Zoning Board about the easement, which I did. I had the letter from the Planning and Zoning Commission recommending to the board to approve the easement. And I also have some other information for the town's attorney about this. Bear with me a minute here. I also have, if the members want to see the map and the survey that was drawn up that the town's attorney told me to have done prior to getting the easement. If you'd like to see the map and the location of the easement and everything. This was drawn up by land surveyor. This is where the line is. And I have a picture here that might help the board. I own this property right next door where I want to hook the water. This is my property, this is the town property. This is a picture of going into the town transfer station. And there's the gate, and there's a fire hydrant right there that I'm saying I want to hook into. It's right in the roadway. And I would like to present this motion that the zoning board made in the meeting to approve it. I didn't make copies of that, but that should show the approval.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to present to the board, Mr. Leggio?
I looked at the 2 letters and the map and approval by the planning and zoning and the recommendation to the board for the easement.
Okay, in your packets, there's also 2 additional pieces of information. One is the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority minutes from docket number 12/11/17 dated March 21st, 2014. And on page 3, last paragraph, the authority has reviewed the data submitted and has determined that the applicant's proposal is not the best method of providing water service to the property, especially in light of the fact that there is an existing water main in front of their property. The authority also finds that the applicants have presented no exceptional hardship circumstances for which an exception to Connecticut Agency Regulation 16-1164 should be granted. Therefore, the authority denies the application. This was brought back in front of the authority on May 23rd, 2014, which is also in your packet. And on page 2, halfway through the last paragraph, it's restating the reasons for the rejection. And that last sentence, this provides the orderly expansion of water systems, at least costs for future maintenance, repairs, and replacement. Your request to provide water service from Aquarium's water system across the municipal property is an unnecessarily surreptitious route. Accordingly, your request for reconsideration of decision is hereby denied. So you've gone in front of PURA twice, and
Yes.
twice it's been rejected.
Yes, and
Why has it been rejected by PURA?
because they did not thoroughly investigate the problem that I told them about getting the water and the personal thing involved with the water line and the monies and other things about it. I'm still pursuing this with them. In their letter, they stated that, somebody stated that's complaining that this was not approved and I needed the easement. So I need the easement. This is what I was told by everyone. I need the easement in place. Then I go to Pure Water again, and I present my case to them about the hardship for the water involving the family and what I brought to the Planning and Zoning Commission. They're just running me around here for 2 years. This is a family thing, and they're just keep pushing against it. I have people working on it for me. My attorney, unfortunately, passed away while all this was going on, and I'm trying to go forward with it on my own up to this part. So, Pure, in my view, cannot deny me this. This is a hardship case, it says it in there. They just didn't investigate it, because I've been to all the meetings, I have all the paperwork. So I want this easement put in place that the town promised me. The town attorney told me to go ahead with it. I had all the maps and the surveys done. I complied to everything they said. Furthermore, the hydraulic company, Aquarium Water, when I started this thing 2 years ago, I've been without water on my industrial property for 2 years. I've been jugging it in. I called them, and they said, when I went to meet with them, they gave me a runaround, and they told me they didn't know who owned the water line. Then it comes up that a relation of mine owns it, or paid for it, which is illegal. This is another thing down the road. So they told me this, okay? So I says, I need water. They says, find another source. I got all this documented. Find another source for the water. I came to the town, and I asked for the easement to get the water. Then the water company says to me, I have to get the easement, and then I have to go to Pure Water and have variance to hook to the water because of the problem involved with this hardship. So that's where I'm at now. So I need the board to okay this, and then it's my thing to go back to the water company and Pure it, which I'm still pursuing, and I have some people helping me with it.
Okay, so there is a water hookup directly in front of your property that would not require you to cross town property?
Yes.
Correct.
Let me explain to you though. The water,
Because just so you know, and just to put out there,
Yeah,
when we first spoke, you made no mention of that.
all right, there is a water
So, but
connection.
I just want to make it clear, Mr. Leggio.
Okay, all right.
When we had these conversations,
All right.
you made absolutely no mention of the water line directly in front of your property.
All right.
And you said, hold on, it's my turn to talk now. You said the only access I could potentially have would be across the transfer station parking lot connecting to that water hydrant. You made no mention
Yes,
of the
that's,
public access directly in front of your property.
okay.
No, I just want to make sure that the
All right,
facts
all
are being presented properly.
All right,
That's
well,
all.
I might have presented that wrong. Here's the thing.
Okay, but I just want you to understand,
Okay.
the town took steps accordingly based on the information that you gave it, which was incorrect.
Okay. it was-
Once we found out that there was water line directly in front of your property, what did we ask you to do? What did we ask you to do? Go to Pura and get approval. You did not get the approval from Pura.
No, because they said I need the easement
Okay,
from you guys. The line that is there, let me explain it.
okay.
The line that is there was brought up for the industrial park, right next to my property. The line ended right there by the town gate, in front of my property, right there. My in-laws bought the property. They extended the line, now listen to me, extended the line from that point all the way up the front of my property to theirs, probably 200 feet. They dug up all my front, they never fixed it, they left it a mess, they hooked the water. Now that's a line that was extended. They're trying to push me in to hook onto the line that was extended, which is trying to hold me hostage to pay a lot of money, and my family already paid for that. My sister and my brother paid for that line. Now my in-laws claim they owned it, and they want to charge me to hook into the line that we paid for already. My brother and I own this property. My brother-in-law confronted
Wait, hold on. Your brother and sister paid for which line?
the extension.
Paid for the extension?
Yeah, now I should be able to hook into that extension. My brother paid for
The
it.
extension that's directly in front of your property?
Yeah, that they extended, that's
Okay.
directly in front of my property,
Okay.
to hook into it, at no cost, because it was paid for by the family,
Okay, so you're saying that you should be able to hook into what's directly in front of your property?
for free.
Okay, but wait, hold on a
No,
second.
not free, I paid.
That's not us, that's not our decision.
Oh,
That's not our decision.
all right, well, I'm telling you what it is.
So if you're saying right now that you should be hooking to the water line directly in front of your property,
At no cost.
okay, that's fine. Why are you asking the town then for an easement to go across town property to hook up someplace else? It doesn't make any sense.
Because they won't let me hook into it. They want me to pay thousands of dollars to hook into the water, because they had to pay it to extend it. And they didn't. My
Okay.
family paid for it.
Okay, and what did Pura say?
I haven't gotten to them with that yet. I've been bringing them all the info. They didn't even read that part.
Okay, so then why is Pura denied you twice?
Because they didn't investigate who owns the water line and who paid for it. It's that simple. I have all the papers. I've been there over and over again. All I'm interested in is getting the easement at this point.
So you're saying that the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority has no idea who owns the water line?
They do.
Okay, but that's not what you just said.
They know who owns it,
Okay,
all right? But they don't know who paid for it.
okay,
The thing is in my nephew's name, which didn't even own the property, in the contract from the water company. I have to go after the water company. I know what I'm doing, I know where I have to go. I need the easement, then I go to Pura, and I get the attorney for him, and I tell them, go through the whole thing, and that's my last spot to get the water. The water company told me to do it, they told me to do it, so I'm on my last leg. If I get this okay for the easement, I go to them, and they still have to decide. But I have to provide more information and evidence and have them investigate the water line and the installation and who paid for it, which they haven't done.
okay.
So all I want is the easement. As a business person, I own 3 pieces of property in town. I want the town to help me out here and give me the easement, and then I'll go to the next step, to pure water. I need this water. I still do not have water. And I refuse to fix my well when they have city water here. The well doesn't work. It's in the thing. What's wrong with it?
Okay, the city water directly in front of your property.
What's that?
The city water that's directly in front of your property.
It's right next to mine where the town owns, and I just have to cross it by 10 feet. 10 feet. I'm not going across 20 acres of town land. It's across a driveway. And I just want the easement and the permission to do that.
Okay.
If they don't grant it to me, the water company, Pura, I have to fight with them. And it's going to be a winning battle, because when they find out about the line and it's just a mess. I'm not quitting. 2 years, I'm not quitting, and I got to take them to court over the water line or whatever I do. But I got to have this in place. I have to have that in place, and then I have one more thing with that.
Okay. Does any board member have any questions or comments?
Yes.
Anne Marie?
I just want to make sure I'm clear. I feel like we've just beaten the dead horse on this whole line thing. But there's a line in front of your house, right?
No, in front of my property.
There's a line in front of your property
Yeah.
that your in-laws, your family, they own.
They paid to extend it. My
We
brother
don't own
and
it.
sisters.
Whatever. Your family paid for it,
Yes.
right?
To extend it.
There's a line in front of your house. It's a yes or no
No.
question.
No, there's a line in front of the town gate.
Stop with the town. Stop with the town. I'm asking a question. There is a line that your family extended from one house all the way
No,
up,
it's not a house.
Industrial park.
It's
industrial park.
Right.
From their property all the way up, that goes in front of your
Yeah,
house.
they extended it,
In
right.
front of your property.
Right, they had it extended, right.
And you don't want to pay to hook into their line.
No, my family paid for it.
You don't want to pay the, I'm trying to
Yeah, okay.
understand.
All right, okay, go ahead.
It's a yes or no,
all right,
okay? I'm
all right.
just trying to understand,
All
okay?
right,
So they want you to pay them to hook into that line.
right.
Okay, but you don't want to pay them because you felt it's done, it's over with. So you want the town to give you an easement so you can cross over theirs to hook into the water line because you feel that you should be able to do that because your family basically is just like, done.
Yeah, I want to hook to the line. The line was brought up for the industrial part, listen to this, for the industrial part, for the water, 40 years ago. I've been there since I was a kid. I didn't need the line because my well was there. 40 years the well is shot and I have problems. So I went and I asked my in-laws, my sister and my brother pay for it. Now my in-laws own it. They said, pay to hook up like anybody else would. I said, I already paid to hook up to it. So I have to go to the next step what the water company told me. Look for an alternative. I went to Bridgeport, I met with them. They says, find another way. I went and explained it to them. They says, go to the town, get an easement, and go to Pura and get the, what you call it, and we'll hook the water for you.
But Pura said it's not a hardship.
What's that?
Pura said it wasn't a hardship.
No, they said it wasn't. They didn't even review the case of, I told them who owned it and this and that. I have all the meetings. I went up there with them and they didn't even check into it.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
They're trying to hold me hostage to pay this line that I paid for already. This is the hardship that I brought up when I first went with this. And I came to the town and explained it to the board, and they said, definitely, they're forcing you to hook into the line that's been paid.
Whoa, Mr. Leggio. Not even close did that take place. So don't put words in my mouth. At no time did I ever say that or make any comment like that.
No, you
And I appreciate if you
I-
would not
I
take
don't-
my words out of context.
I
That's what,
didn't
now would you
mean to
just,
do that. If I did, I'm not an attorney, I don't know. I'm just telling you what my problem is, and I'm looking for some help here. I'm trying to explain it as good as I could. I gave you all the paperwork I've been doing up to this point, and I still have to go back to Pura. They sent me the last letter, says, from my relations to complainant, there is no easement in place, it was denied, which it wasn't. I checked on it, you people tabled it to another time, which I'm here for now to present it.
Les,
And I need that, and then I'm going back to Pura. That's my fight with them about the rest of the line and whatever's involved to get them under the hardship clause to give me the water. Otherwise, I'll have to sue the water company, state of Connecticut, whatever it is.
okay.
I just have one quick question.
This is a serious matter. It's 2 years without water.
Sir,
I have
have
two-
you, I just have to ask a question. Have you looked at how much it would cost to hook up to the line that's right on your property versus fighting
Yeah.
and going to court and to get this easement
Yeah.
pushed through and fighting with Pura and all this? Have you, so what's your analysis say? What's the data say? How
The
much is that
analysis
gonna
was to
cost
that.
you?
Why should I pay for something that
Ah.
my brother and I paid for already,
Right.
extending the line?
I just want to hear what the
All right.
numbers would be. What are the numbers?
Now, they want me to pay again, because they own it.
How much?
It's over $15,000.
Okay.
To hook right there where the line is right in front of my property, where they ran it all the way up, and I didn't have no problem. They put it all the way up my family, now the in-laws on it. They want me to reimburse them for the money that my family paid. That's what it comes down to.
Okay.
Okay.
So can I ask you how much money you've paid so far in legal fees to pursue this matter?
I don't know, my attorney passed away.
Well, he
And
must
I'm
have sent you a bill. I mean, I'm an attorney, I make sure I send bills.
Yeah, well, I didn't get a bill from him because he was working on the case.
Was he doing it pro bono for you?
He
For free?
worked on the case, and he told me to go ahead with what I've been doing, so I wouldn't have to pay him all this money. Go to the meeting with the authority and get back to him, so I did back and forth, but he passed
So
away.
he
in
wasn't
the-
formally billing you for his advice,
Yeah.
basically?
No,
Okay.
but I'm sure if I had to do everything I did, the bill would be atrocious.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions I could answer, or?
And I'm sitting here, and I'm a little bit confused too, and I'm seeing this as a family dispute. And you're asking the town to settle a family dispute, and that is not what we're supposed to do.
No, it's not a family dispute, it's a hardship. The hardship is I need the water.
But you can hook in to the line in front.
Yeah, but the hardship is I have to pay again for something that already was
So you
paid
want the
for?
town, do you want the town to give it to you for free?
No, the town's not giving it to me for free. The town is gonna allow me to hook into a line that was brought up there for the
Well, who's gonna do
industrial
the work to
park.
hook that?
Huh?
Who's gonna hook it up?
I'm gonna pay a contractor to hook it,
So why don't you pay him to hook to the road?
because the town, to hook to the town and bring it to my property, the contractor just has to dig it up and go to my building.
And how much did he tell you it would cost you?
That's gonna probably cost me about $5,000. I don't have enough of money to even pay my taxes. And everybody wants me to pay other stuff. I'm looking for help here. I own 3 parcels of property in Seymour over 40 years paying taxes, industrial property, and I have lost money in rent, which I'm going to go to the DPUC about. And I want to be reimbursed. How can I rent property with no water? I'm asking the town to help me out here. And this is a hardship, and the water company says, the jury says, under a hardship, you could get the variance for the thing.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I have a couple questions here. To Paul's point, actually, I can see this being somewhat of a civil issue, which it seems to me, judging by what you're describing here, you don't want to go down that road. You don't want to have to go to a lawsuit against your family
I
or
don't want no
whatnot.
lawsuits with anybody.
My question, I guess, maybe it's a better question for Kurt, how does this easement affect, how would it affect the town property? We'd have to, obviously we'd have to dig up, I'm assuming across the driveway
We'd have to.
to the transfer station?
Across the transfer station driveway.
Okay.
The potential impact would be if something would happen to that line, depending on the day, we could have to shut the transfer station down to make repairs to that line.
Well,
Do
here's,
you have the survey? I want to keep that of the thing.
I think it's done with Karen.
here's where I'm going with this. You know, I read through the letter from the Public Utility Regulatory Authority dated on March 21st, and it actually lists the following shall generally not constitute sufficient cause for granting an exception. And it lists 3 different situations. Judging by what you've described to me here, it seems to me that this would fall under the first
Mr. Leggio, if you can back up, please.
Mr. issue that they actually
Mr. Leggio?
list,
Could you back up, please?
which is when the intent is to avoid the time and expense of a proper main extension and proper service pipe installation or other reasonable engineering solution in conformance with good engineering standards of practice. Now, I'm not an attorney, and I don't work for the state of Connecticut. I don't have any input on this matter whatsoever. But judging by what they've written, even if we were to grant the easement, Pura won't. According to this, they will not approve it. Now, that's obviously, you said this is your fight. This is what you want to pursue. My question is, you know, from the town's perspective, what are we giving up? We're giving up the potential of having to shut down the transfer station if something were to happen. Obviously, there's going to be construction issues and everything else with regard to having to extend the main.
You don't have to, pardon me, you don't have to extend the main, you just have to like tap into it. It don't have to be extended, just tap in. I checked with the contractor. He said he could do it on a Sunday, hook the line, put the meter in, and it's done. And he'll fix the road. And he even said if the town would give him the millings, he would grade it all off nice where they come in by the gate. It's only across the gate. I don't even know why I need a variance. I mean, it's a town road. They said it's 10 feet over, so I gotta go through this, the water company. So I'm doing it. They said it's supposed to be 25 feet. Above that, you need an easement.
Rich?
I just wanted to just add one thing in terms of this pure discussion. To Len's point, and I wanted to make sure Mr. Leggio was aware that this was in the decision that he received, and I'm not sure he's focused on this. It says, the authority also finds that the applicants have presented no exceptional hardship circumstances for which an exception to Connecticut Agencies Reg 16-11-64 should be granted. Therefore, the authority denies the application. That's on page 3. And that means that Pura found that there's no hardship basis for an exception to standard practice. So the point is, there's really no reason to give an easement because Pura is not going to approve the tie-in because they have found there's no hardship. That's what they found in this decision.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure that, because I'm not sure he's aware of that. And I knew his attorney, Mr. Androsky, who passed away, and I understand that. But I wanted to make sure that the board saw that, and Mr. Leggio was aware of that.
Yes, I'm aware of that. This is what I'm trying to straighten out with Pura.
With Pura.
With Pura, right. Right. I feel they haven't gone into it far enough, and I'm probably gonna get an attorney at this part to investigate the hardship and the whole thing thoroughly, and I'm going back to them to get this. But they said I don't have the easement in place, so this is what I'm doing now.
Okay.
I'm not looking, I'm looking for
I'm
the
good.
easement.
Any other questions? No?
Questions or comments, anyone? No? Okay, what action would the board like to take? Make a motion.
Mr. First Selectman, I'd make a motion that we deny your request.
Okay, motion's made. Is there a second to that? Motion's made and second. Motion by Paul, second by Al. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The chair votes aye. Motion passes 6-0. So, sorry, Mr. Leggio.
So it's refused the easement?
Yes. Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 11.